night.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Horror Oasis, a radio show where we discuss all the latest movies and news from the world of horror. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Ian. Ian, are you there?
I am.
I tell you, man, for some reason, that intro music, it was skipping for me. It was weird.
I'll go back and listen to it. It wasn't on my end, but I don't know if it's just because it was playing or, like from my computer. So.
Yeah, I don't know, but either or, it's just another thing. We're trying to get the kinks worked out as we're going live here now. And we're doing our Savage Nursery marathon. And it has been, I tell you, it's been a rough 2 watches. But I'm looking forward to reviewing this one, what review there will be, foreshadowing. But yeah, our film tonight, I mean, there's really not much to get into beforehand. It's just pretty much just straight reviews now for our little marathons before we get into the realm of doing a few other things, because we have a few other ideas to bring in, not ideas, but segments to start. And one of them involves Ian, which we'll get into a little bit later. But first, we're doing this marathon series. But Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was covered in blood is the tagline. And this is another British offering. There's some regulars in there, and especially our lead actress, Miss May. And she plays Kathy. And we know Miss May because she was the lead in last week's episode, Three Blind Mice. She does a little bit better job in this one than she did in that one because she wasn't cowering and screaming and crying constantly and getting on your nerves and overacting. She did a fairly decent job in this one until the end. But we'll get into that. So her name's Carla, and she runs this radio show, this podcast, I believe, called Carla's Cold Cases, where she talks with her co-hosts about these, again, cold cases from years prior. And she gets talked to by her producer, manager, whoever's in charge of the radio show. And he says, listen, these episodes that you're doing from like the 1800s or 1900s, like they're not doing any numbers, they're not bringing in people, and you got to do something to get those numbers up that would be sufficient for me, because if not, we're cutting you. And she's talking to him, trying to figure out an ordeal, and she goes back and talks to her colleagues, and they said, well, we can do this thing about these missing people in this county or this country, town not too far from where they do this radio show. And she goes back and she talks to Pat, I believe was his name, the manager, and he says, all right, you do the missing persons case, but make it a hell of a show. Do all what you can to make it a big, big project. And they agree, and then they set out. Not Mary, but Carla and her crew set out to do this big missing persons case, and the story therein. And on their way there, their car breaks down, and they travel through the woods, and they meet Mary and her lamb, and that's the story. So we kind of had a little bit of higher expectations for this one compared to Three Blind Mice last week after our review of the film. And I'll just say that, again, the expectations were at least be sufficient enough where there's not a major glaring issue that just ruins the whole thing that you have built up with a mouse, a rat man shooting an arrow from a crossbow. And this one, it didn't have no really major glaring flaws or issues. It was just as basic a slasher film as you can get. They really kind of play up this idea mentioned in the film, and they I wouldn't say squander, they just kind of meander around a while and don't really do much with it. And it gets to like the last 25 minutes before something with the lamb is like actually entertaining enough. They do a lot of talking, and it's just like uninteresting talking, like, oh, let's do this story about Mary now, and we can just like embellish like the story that we were gonna do, but do it about Mary and her special needs child, and why he's locked up in an attic and all that stuff. And put two and two together where like the missing people is connected to Mary, and little do they know. And it's just like the conversations don't really go nowhere. They just the characters besides Carla is just like one-dimensional fodder. And again, that's kind of normal for a slasher film, but like they really don't do much, and like they're just there. Where the family in Three Blind Mice, it was kind of needed for the story. This one, like, who the hell cares? In a sense, like they're just there.
Yeah.
You don't even know they're there at half the time either. They're just like they're there and then they're not. And like, okay, here's this person, here's that person. They don't really do much, and you just kind of forget like, who's this person, who's that? Oh, okay, like apparently, okay, who's Shelly, who's Joan, like Mona, there's like Ray, and just like all these people, like I don't even know what your job is. You're just a part of the show and her colleague and crew, but I don't exactly know what you do. You're just there, and they don't really do much besides that. And then they do the whole Mary and her lamb situation, and there was a lot there that they could have touched upon more. And like what little ideas that were injected into that which we'll get into spoilers maybe a little bit later when we bring it up. But like, again, I like the idea of where like they took the story. If they just kind of hearkened, like kind of made it a little bit more forthcoming and a little bit more sort of in your face instead of like pulling back with it. because there was an interesting story idea that could have been touched upon, and they kind of just kind of let it slip through their fingers a little bit because there was an okay premise, even though again the premise itself is just something that's been done to death and everything. And I was about to write you this in on on Messenger, and just like, man, this is like the setup to like so many found footage movies. You have a failing podcast or a failing TV show or a failing something, and like the people are like, you got to give me something big, you got to do something, like Dead Detectives was like that, Camp Coldbrook was like that. Again, a lot of found footage movies where like, or just like TV shows like that where like you gotta do something big, and then they go there, or like a publisher like writing a book like, listen, your past books aren't doing anything good, you got to give me something, and then they go off and they get caught up in a town secret. I think Madison County was something similar to that. So like this premise has been, again, like Three Blind Mice, that premise, it's been done to death. And just like the setup and the build, it's like, oh, you're failing something, you gotta do something different with this one. And then we set into, you know the motion of events, leading to a killer stalking them in a house in the woods. Just by the numbers stuff there. It's just like a hodgepodge of stuff just duct taped together to make a story from other more notable stories, especially the ending. Um, because there's a lot of touched upon there that they really kind of just like took a few things from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, but again, I didn't mind it. It's just one of those null watches. It's just like the one thing with these British films is like they're just kind of dull. And like we did that a lot with like Louisa stuff, and like what a Jack Peter Mundy. I don't know if we reviewed any of his stuff, but I watched a lot of his things. And Andrew Jones. It's just like they're just like slow and lifeless, and like there's some a little bit of like an interesting idea here and there sprinkled in, but they just don't do that much with it. And like this one, like there was a little bit of, they were trying, but they still again let the idea slip through their fingers, and just like again created something that was just like, meh. And just like they could have done so much more with it if they just didn't linger along, so long with the conversations that don't go nowhere. And like I know what they were trying to do, but they could have just like, again, like I think we mentioned this with Three Blind Mice, just tone it down, cut some stuff out, trim it here and there, and they could have made a more precise watch, and decent viewing. But like they don't really do that much until the end, the last 25 minutes. So again, it's just like they kind of, again, just like floundered an interesting premise. But Ian, I'll let you talk, and then we'll go back and forth.
Well, I guess the biggest issue I had was that they had all of these characters that literally did nothing. They didn't even like have any interesting deaths, really. They were kind of just there. There were so many of them, in fact, that one of them went missing and they didn't recognize it for a while. So, if at all, like I don't even remember if they acknowledged that first person went missing. I was just like, what are you guys doing? Like, why are you having all of these characters that like I kept forgetting who like about them because of how little they were like, a part of the story.
Yeah,
I
you
was like,
didn't
this
need
is
that many people. There's
no,
too many people.
yeah, and I don't know, like I liked what it was trying to do. Um, I thought like, I really liked the look of the killer. I kind of liked the how the Mary Had a Little Lamb played into the storytelling. Um, I liked all of that. They had a nice little setup, like it was, you know, like it made sense of why they were doing what they were doing, but at the same time, like I just felt like they could have done so much more with it. And I really do wish it was more, like you said, in your face with it. Uh, and honestly, I felt like they could have gone a little bit more brutal with the killings. But I mean, it's not a bad. I honestly, I mean, it's definitely better than Three Blind Mice, um, or at least to me it was. Uh, but I don't know. There's like not really much. I was finding myself like bored. They talked way too much in this film. The pacing was crap. Nothing really happens. And when it does, it's over real quick.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I mean, it was a watch. I
No,
didn't
I was
hate
thinking.
myself.
Yeah, I was thinking when I was like talking, going back and forth with like shortening it and like how it'd be like more precise. A good example, and it's almost similar in a way, is Stuart Gordon's Dolls. I don't know if you've seen Dolls, Ian, or not, but that involves a family going to this house, in an old house during a storm, and there's this old lady and old man, and they're like doll makers, and like that film is like a even like 70 or 75 minutes. It's like a very short watch, and it gets in there, gets you the premise, gets you in there and out, very quickly, and it's like constant, like people are turning into dolls, getting, like everything like that, and a little girl's doing her thing, trying to solve, like figure out what's going on, and then like you have the characters that are assholes doing their thing and getting their comeuppance. And like that was like a good, again, 75 or so minutes. And like this one is like it's the same thing where like the people go to the house and there's something, the MacGuffin in the house, and like it just like, oh, we get to this house, oh, let's have tea, let's talk about this, let's do that, let's let's just, oh, we're gonna maybe call the tow truck driver, maybe we'll do this, and it just like they're just doing nothing, they're just like scratching their balls, and just like doing nothing, like the old Al Bundy sticking his hand down his pants, and just like, I'm just gonna sit here and loaf, I'm just gonna loaf, meander around. Oh yeah, my son's deformed. He wears a lamb's head. That somehow he manages to bite people's necks and pull their throat out with their a lamb's mouth that's it's non-moving. I don't know how
Right.
that happens. Um, but again, it's a minute thing, like that part. Like at least it's something in comparison. But like again, it's just they didn't do that much with it. And like one lady got her arms snapped backwards, and like really, that's a death. We're gonna do this. And like the arms didn't get pulled off. No, we just pulled them backwards. She's laying on her stomach and just pull them out of socket. And like, okay, I don't think pulling your arms out of socket's gonna kill you, but all right. Um, it's gonna hurt, but it's not gonna kill you. Um, but yeah, it's just like again, a lot of deaths were just kind of again unimpressive. And like for
Yeah.
something like this, they needed, you know, as much as we, you know, Three Blind Mice, it was like it ruined the film, it completely took you out of everything that they built up. But at least like they had some okay gore, like practical gore and people getting like their intestines eaten and fucking arrow in the back by a blind rat. Um, but the deaths were okay, in that one, even though it just didn't make sense from a lore standpoint in the film that they were trying to portray. This one is just like just a plain Jane slasher, like the looks okay, and like he's well, he's not special needs, well he is, but he's he has a disability is the best way to put it, and from what happened to Mary, um and like they give him like extra padded shoulders to make it, to give you the look that he's like, there's something wrong with him without showing anything. So I think they did a good job there. But again, it's just like the kills. Like he's supposed to be this protector of his mother and killing bad people, and they don't really. He doesn't really do much. It's like pretty shitty, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll let
Yeah,
you go on
definitely.
again.
I mean, that's one thing I think is bad about these kind of films is that like they're just so mundane that it's even hard to find something to just like latch onto and just tear into it because like
Yeah.
it's a fine movie like it but it's not like anything great. You just and I did like I said I didn't hate myself after watching this like I did with Three Blind Mice. Like I by the end of that I was actually like mad and I was like ready to like this is just like so many poor choices, like too much talking. Like they were literally just filling dead air with just you know
And people are
talking
walking slow. Just like walk as slow as you can through this hallway.
and bring up the same shit over
Yeah.
and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, and I felt like they could have gone like, I felt like they could have if they would have just had like maybe four people, and then they pick them off slowly, and where there's like some kind of like chase or something, but most of the shit just happens real quick. It goes back to talking. A little bit of shit happens, goes back to talking, and like I liked the dinner scene. I liked all the lore being brought up about this guy, the main killer, and I just I was like, I don't know. I honestly kind of expected a little bit more because the poster has you know a big dude with a sheep head on with a like covered in blood. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, maybe this is going to be like some kind of camp horror, or gore fest. Nope.
Especially toward the beginning of the film too, where it's just like he lobs the guy down on the table. Or is that the beginning? Or is that the middle? That's the middle. But like again, like they should have had something like that a little bit more. I was like, they should have done that a little bit, here and there. Like someone's getting
Yeah.
their arm or leg chopped off, or besides the head. Even though it looked not very good, but they tried.
Yeah, like I felt like they could have at least did some more like that. Like it had so much going for it. It has a lot of potential to be pretty decent. And I just felt like the ending was just also kind of lackluster. Nothing really like happens, and then some stuff happens, and then it ends. And I was just like, "Whoa! Is like really? Is that the ending?"
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, we're gonna rip off Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I wish they would have ripped it off in other places, like the gore, because like I don't like. I felt like it just needed to dial up some. It didn't need to like go super hardcore with it, but
No, they
like,
played it too safe.
yeah, it was
And
like,
especially with that again, like they just like the look of these characters with the three blind mice with the lamb, like they don't do nothing with them. They're just there, and that's
yeah,
like I watched a few slashers over the weekend. I watched one called Buzz Cut, which is about a mutated, not a mutated, but he is sort of mutated, but a beekeeper, a guy goes around slashing people in a beekeeper outfit, and like it's an Australian film or New Zealand film, and it had some good gore, like a lot of good gore. Sadly, the rest of the film sucked and it was way too long. like an hour and 40 minutes, and like the gore was good, and like the look of the killer was cool, and he was like chopping people up, and you know, heads were rolling, getting chopped off, and like it was cool, like again, like they did good with that. And then I watched another one called Punch, which is about a killer in a punch mask, Punch and Judy, and like he's going around hitting people with baseball bats, and that one wasn't very good either. That was also British. And just like these films, just like they have a good idea, but they just don't know what to do with it because Buzzcut went super fucking comedic, and like the tone of the film's all over the place where it just like doesn't work, and it almost is like bikini bloodbath, those films where it's just like too campy and cheap, way over the top, and then you introduce this killer that kills people in gory ways, but they just like flounder it. And then Punch was just another one, just wasn't very good, and like this is like the third slasher, and it's like, well, it was okay. It's just like it falls right in line with those other ones. It's just like the killers are cool, but they just don't do much with it. And this one again, like as we mentioned before, like we like the idea for Mary and the Lamb and the reasoning behind everything, and like there's like sets up throughout the house. There's like pictures of Mary and like her with the her kid, and or her lamb as she calls it, and like there's the images of the child scratched out the faces, and just because she's not pleased with the way he turned out, and there's like again they could have done more with like the backstory of Mary, and like again they do talk about it and discuss it and bring it up here and there, but like that was like the best part of the movie is just like Mary and her discussing what happened to her, and like they needed to do something more like that with the Carla, and like trying to not lose her job and all that stuff, and like they just kind of just like mention it here and there, and they could have like I don't know. It's just again like I'm really just kind of grasping at straws because this film's again it's just like it wasn't terrible, but it's just not very good, and there's just not really much to discuss, and I'm just like it's just one of those where I'm just like again it's just like there, and it's just like it's not. They could have done so much more. Like we said, like add more flavor, do something crazy, not over the top crazy, but just like add more spice to it, just like have the lamb be a little bit more brutal, do a few things here and there, and more inventive kills, besides just snapping arms off to someone or chopping a head off, even though it was cool, like hey, head chopped off, even though it wasn't looking that great.
Yeah.
But they could have done something else with it besides just like, oh, we're just gonna rip off the ending of Texas Chainsaw Massacre for our finale. Have our main character jump in the back of a truck, drive off, and have Lamb Man, flail an axe around. In lieu of a chainsaw, it's an axe.
Yeah, I mean, I just wish this, like I said, like I wish they would have done some more. None of the characters were really all that interesting. I mean, the main girl was kind of, but like honestly, I kept forgetting that other characters were in the movie as I was watching the movie, and I was like, oh yeah, like when they would come back into screen, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, these people exist. These extremely forgettable people that aren't doing anything. Like, why are you all here? Like, I that was one thing I did not understand. Like, there's no possible reason that this person should be here.
Yeah, I mean, all you really needed was Carla, maybe like her second, in command co-host, or maybe both co-hosts because I guess Ray and Mona were her co-hosts. I don't know. the couple that made out constantly, like
Yeah.
it was just fodder. Like there's no reason for them. It was just there, and like and their deaths were like I don't even remember them. I don't even know how they died. I have no clue. Literally, I just finished it not too like a couple hours ago, and I already forgot their deaths. Um, but yeah, and then like there's like what like 7 people into that car. It was like, and you didn't need that many, and like it just like they just like kept the conversations for like people that had like no reason being there. And I know we're just circling
Yeah.
around the drain with these people. It's like it's it's a glaring flaw if I had to say anything. Like there's way too many people. Like you keep it at a good 4, and that'd have been perfect, you know. And you didn't have the stupid couple just like, oh, we're gonna go out and do something here. You look over the house. Like, okay, like why do they need to look over the house? You know, it's not their house.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just, like I said, it's just like so much of this made no sense. Like I was sitting here questioning every decision being made, not just by the people, but like by the people who wrote the movie. Like, why are you including this? Like, it's not doing anything. Like, oh, he's a quiet, a light sleeper, and I was like, okay. And then he escapes, and that was it. I was like, I wish it would have just went like,
Yeah,
like
like he
I,
escapes. Like he's protecting his mother, yet he escapes, and then they look for him. Like, wouldn't you be attacking the people beforehand? You know, like you already killed the one, and then you just escape, and then where you going? You know, what's the point? Like, you're a mama's boy. You know, you're supposed to protect her, and like you're just gonna run off, and then oh, I'm just gonna come back and attack 2 people making out, and then attack other people for some reason. You know, like it doesn't make sense. Like when you get attacked or not attacked, but escape, and then like there's people there, go after the people, make them run and cower in fear instead of you. You're supposed to be this hulking monster, you know.
yeah. And like, I mean, I'm glad that like at the end there was a big call out, but like just nothing really got done with that. Like like I said, it just was over so fast. Ugh.
Yeah.
Why do we do this to ourselves?
Well, Ian, that's the thing. You never know. And like again, we don't know when we review these how they're going to turn out. Like
Oh,
yeah,
I know.
we know half of them's not going to be good. But again, that's the point of the show. We review stuff and we, you know, broaden our horizons and watch
Yeah.
some of the weirdest movies. You know, like I'm going to watch a film called Pan Man after a while about a dude wearing a freaking pan on his head. You know, and he kills people with pans. You know, because I like weird shit. And like I just want to see how things turn out. You know, I watched a film called Brain Tumor earlier from the guy who directed Bloodsuckers from Outer Space, and it's the first film he's like he hasn't directed anything since the 80s, and he comes back this year with Brain Tumor. And my God, if that's the film you're going to come back with, just not make anything at all, you know, because that's almost like this. Because when you have a freaking brain tumor, it's like at least make it interesting, you know, instead of just having a fucking doctor talk about his son and you're trying to make this. I don't even know if you're trying to make a parody or comedy or I don't know what you're trying to do with brain tumor. But then when you have the brain tumor itself grow to the size of Gary from SpongeBob, and it looks like that, but it has like a vagina for a mouth. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and you don't even do anything with it. That's another again. That's a tangent for something else. You know, it's just like I've watched some pretty bad movies here lately, and it's just like it irks me. And just like again, you want to watch something okay, and just like oh god, just you get shit after shit after shit. You know, just like it's a freaking German Brazilian scat fetish video. You know, just like yeah, that's just me, mouth open. Here comes the shit. Just like just smearing it all over myself. But no, here we are. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Again, they had the story was there. It's just like they have. That's the thing with these films. Like they have an idea, they just don't know how to use it efficiently, and that's the main downfall for half of them. Like the Three Blind Mice, you had an okay idea if you knew how to use it correctly. Mary Had a Little Lamb, same thing. There was an interesting, again, story there with how Mary had a lamb and what details involved and all the dark secrets there that came out when Mary went on her tangent. But yeah, they just give you the backstory, the story and the idea of the good idea, the inkling there, good idea, and they just, you know what? Let's not do anything with it. Let's not have fun. Let's not make an interesting, enjoyable movie. Let's meander around and just stick our thumbs up our asses and just like, you know what? That's good. That's perfect. That's efficient. The less work we have to do, the better. Let's make this on the cheap, put it on Tubi, on the $10 shelf at Walmart. Perfect. Let's not try anything. Let's get the most of our money back. Let's only put a couple $10,000 into this thing and get back double, and then make so many more on the cheap and not even try.
Yeah.
And like, that's how they do it over there. Like, again, Louisa shot a film in her fucking bedroom and it got on the $10 racks at Walmart. And like, I have no idea why, but it did. ITN, this is, again, Uncorked and ITN are just, oh God. When you see those logos pop up, like, yep, I know what I'm in for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it is what we tend to get when it comes to, British or European movies, is that it's just like a big bag of nothing. Like, you don't really like, as well, at least for the indie horror, that is.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a couple of European movies that actually had like a budget that did try, but this, like, it's like almost like they have these great ideas. They get, like, like I said, I really like the killer and Mary Had a Little Lamb. I like the look. I was like, that is a menacing, terrifying thing. But I did not feel menaced or terrified while watching it. So I was like, okay. And it just seems like that's the course. Like, they always, like, all of them have these great ideas and they just squander it.
Yeah.
They just want to play safe.
I have a strong inclination that when those Mickey Mouse horror films come out, or the Steamboat Willie, it's just going to be, it's going to be the same thing. Like, you have the killer in a Mickey Mouse mask and just like does nothing. It's going to be this, but like a Mickey Mouse mask, and just like, ugh. You just like all these ideas. And again, like, you could have done so much more. Like, I don't know. They just don't. Like, they don't even try. I mean, they do. I mean, they put effort into it, but it's just like it's like, again, I go back to my analogies. It's like you take like so long to build up this paper, and like, remember, this paper's due on this day. Don't forget it. And like, you just procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate, and then finally, like, the day of, you write, a paper, and just like off the top of your head, like an hour before you turn it in, like, yeah, there you go. That's all my effort. It's like them. They could have had all this planning involved, and like, you can think of things and have all this planning to write a good paper, a good paper. You can get yourself a good grade, and they just hold off until the final day, up until like the final hour before class, working on it, the previous class, maybe they have gym or something. Like I'll just write it during gym or some class where I don't have to do much, like art class or something, and just like get it done the hour prior and turn it in. Like there you go. And then you get a C or a D, and like, yeah, it's perfect. It's passing. you know, I'm not gonna be no valedictorian. I'm not gonna get no no scholarships. I just want to make a lot of stuff, put it out there. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. They just like last minute, like what? We'll just turn this in. Don't worry about it.
And we have people here like Michael Taylor Pritt who made a psychological werewolf movie that,
Exactly.
like, yeah, and that's what I keep thinking. I'm like, man, I mean, obviously these are a bunch of rich people who are making these movies, and I like,
it's just that
I mean,
click.
I just wish. I mean, yes, no, like, it's all connected, and that's just.
I mean, that blonde lady, the blonde
Yeah.
lady that made out, she's in like half of Louise's filmography. So she gets a paycheck.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, if it's what
Pays the bills.
yeah. I mean, if
Yeah.
they're making money from it.
But I guess final thoughts or final word. I don't know, Ian. I mean, obviously, you liked it better than Three Blind Mice, but in a way, I kind of, me and where like things are, and if they're messy or convoluted, I kind of like it. Where that film just like falls apart, it kind of again it ruins the movie that everything's set up. But in a way, I kind of liked it. Whereas this one is just like, it's just nothing in a sense. Like it's a cool killer, and the story's not that bad, and like I like the setup. But once that blind mice shoots an arrow, I don't know, man. It's just like that made the film almost, in my opinion. Where it ruined it, it just kind of made it. So I don't know. It's one of those I'm gonna have to set on until we get our third one in, and then we'll do our rankings as we always do. But it's gonna be one of those like, do I like a straightforward slasher, or do I like something where it just fucks its own ass? So I don't know. But I don't, I guess that's gonna do it. I mean, I don't think we have really any final thoughts besides what I already said. But Ian, you got any final thoughts before we call tonight?
Oh, not really. I think we've kind of just said everything.
Yeah, we tried to make do with what we had. Like,
I mean, we did what the movie did. We tried to.
Yeah.
We ran out of plot, so we just had to fill up with random talking points.
Yeah, sometimes again, film does that occasionally, when there's not much there to grab onto. But that's gonna do it for our second film in our Savage Nursery marathon. We will be able to conclude the marathon on our show next week with I'm hoping we'll be the better of both of these. And again, it's a notable film. I'm looking forward to checking and seeing how this one turns out compared to the first one. So that's again counting down the days for that, and then we'll be able to start up a few new ideas as mentioned earlier. But we'll probably be discussing that more on that show, on those shows, and how we're going to plan that out, and figuring out more crazy films to watch and review. So as always, Ian, it's great talking with you, and hopefully everything's going well with the family. And I appreciate everyone listening, and we will see you next time on Horror Night Oasis.